Hello, hello, MRT family. I am thrilled that you all are able to join us for an episode on motherhood and domestic violence. This is a topic that's very difficult to cover, but it has been on my heart and one that MRT wanted to explore because so many women suffer from domestic violence in silence. It is traumatic to experience abuse. It is a compounding challenge when children are involved. This information is still applicable if you're not a mom or if you've not fallen to abuse, but you may know someone or know someone that could be a potential victim. So arm yourself with this information so you know how you can potentially support. Today, we have Rita Smith with us. Yay, I'm so excited. She's a senior advisor for the National Football League and vice president of the external relations of domesticshelter.org. Welcome, welcome, Rita.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you.
I'm so happy that you're able to talk with our MRT viewers. I know that what you'll share today will impact many. And so my MRT viewers, get your paper and pencil and get ready to get some gems from Rita. And so Rita, just to make sure that everybody is aligned to what domestic violence is, can you give us a definition that we can norm ourselves on as we define what is domestic violence?
Sure. So domestic violence is a repeated pattern of behaviors that are meant to control another person. So a lot of different tactics are used. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be verbal abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse kind of things. There are lots of different ways someone can abuse you. But I think that the key is it's repeated, and the purpose is to control another person's behavior.
So just to stamp that, the working definition that we're going with is that domestic violence essentially is something it's violence that's repeated, and it's meant to control someone.
Correct.
Gotcha. And so how can women identify the signs of domestic violence?
I think most women have a sense that something's off about a particular behavior or in the relationship they're in. They don't always call it abuse right away, but there are feelings of discomfort, feelings like that reaction was really kind of over the top, that didn't fit the behavior that I engaged in that this person is responding to. So I think most people have a sense that something's wrong, but it takes a little bit of checking with other people, I think, to really clarify that that's not appropriate behavior, that people who love you don't treat you that way, don't say those kinds of things to you. But initially, I think most people have this kind of little radar sense that goes off that this isn't right, something's wrong here.
Yeah, so never sort of hesitate when you feel like something just does not feel right. And if you're unsure, then essentially just reach out to try to clarify or understand essentially what is happening. Because I think some of the things that you named earlier around the signs of domestic violence aren't necessarily things that people would typically associate with domestic violence, particularly the one around sort of spirituality. You know, you can see someone with a difference of opinion and let it be that. But then when you're saying it's consistent and it's meant to control, then that could be a form of domestic violence. And I know for me, the working definition that I initially had for domestic violence is physical abuse. But it seems as if there are many dimensions to what we consider to be domestic violence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people get stuck in that part of the definition. And I have worked with so many women over the years. I've done this work for over 30 years. And I have talked to a lot of women through the course of that time who never got hit, never once got hit, but they were terrified of this other person. and that other person threatened them consistently and may have even threatened them with weapons, but never touched them. Might have hit the wall near their head, kind of thing, but never hit them directly. And so, we can't put it in a box of just physical abuse, because there are lots of ways that you can control another person, and those tactics are used by abusers. A wide range of tactics are used by abusers to maintain that control and to keep that person under their thumb, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're able to debunk that, because I think oftentimes, that could be part of the reason why folks tend to suffer in silence, because there's not another working definition around what domestic violence is, or, what are the potential signs of those things. And so this sort of opens up my eyes and my understanding for what potential domestic violence could be and look like. And so I can then arm myself with the information that I need to be able to support in that way. And so in doing this, again, this is why I'm excited that we've decided to cover this, because I think this presents additional information to folks who can be in a position to help somebody else who may not even recognize it themselves. And so what are risk factors that are associated with domestic violence?
Well, I think that people who are extremely jealous, for instance, somebody who is constantly trying to monitor everyone you talk to and everyone you see. And I worked with a woman once who was driving with her abuser, and she happened to just look in the car next to her, and it turned into this rage event about, how do you know that guy? Who is that? Why are you looking at him? I mean, it's crazy kind of responses to trying to keep you controlled in a fashion. So there's that. It starts out really almost like a dream, though. I mean, most abusers are really good manipulators, and they're really good at kind of reeling you in and making you feel like they can't live without you, and they want to spend all their time with you, and they almost move too fast. The relationship gets really intense very quickly. And the goal is to try to get you as hooked in as possible before they start engaging in those abusive behaviors. So it may feel like initially, yeah, he or she just cares about me so much, and that's such a nice feeling to have. But before you know it, you're trapped in this web that you didn't realize was being spun around you. And so there's that, and constantly checking where you are, how you spend your money. Not going and spending time with family or friends anymore, because every time it happens, you have a fight about it, because you always treat them differently. You always treat them badly when you go spend time with your family. So let's not go do that, because it always ends in a fight. I mean, there's all these ways that the person starts to engage you, to isolate you basically from your support system. So if those things are happening, you really want to check out some of the other things that might be going on that don't feel right about the relationship, because getting in that quickly, that deeply, may be not in your best interest.
Yeah, and there are so many things that you said there too that kind of resonates now for me, in terms of why people may not recognize the signs or the risk factors right away, because there's this aspect of sort of this disguise of love. And so you have this person who seems as if they're totally into you, want to do all the things, that essentially looks and seems as if they truly care, until they start to isolate you. And then all of a sudden, it's like the jealousy that comes up, but then it can be misconstrued as something else, as opposed to what it actually is. And oftentimes the victims don't necessarily recognize it in the moment, because their abusers are so good at manipulating certain situations.
Yeah, they're master manipulators, Michelle. They really are so good at making you think you're the problem, and always questioning yourself. It's one of their strongest tactics.
And even just, hearing what you just shared and even talking about it, it presents another question for me as it relates to this. And so, is there a profile of a person that oftentimes fall victim to these kinds of situations? Like, what are the things that those people are actually struggling with that then causes them to become a victim here, if there is anything of the sort?
Well, I think there are some things that might make you more vulnerable, but the reality is that abusers look for those vulnerabilities. So they look for where your weak points are. They look for the things that matter most to you, and that those are the things that they file away for future use. And so, statistically, if you witnessed abuse as a child, it may seem more normal to you, but it doesn't mean you're automatically going to be in a relationship with someone who's abusive or violent. It's not a given. It's just um, the most common factor is women being abused by men. That's the most common factor. You're a woman, and so it makes it more likely that that's going to happen to you. But there are some other things that go on, previous trauma that might make it more likely for someone uh, uh, to hook you in a way that's not healthy. But it's not automatic, and it's certainly very strong, independent women are abused as well.
That actually feeds into the question that I was going to ask you about what is the impact of domestic violence on mothers and children. And based on what you just shared a while ago, it seems as if that's also one of the highest groups that's vulnerable to domestic violence. And my added question to that is it because oftentimes, you know, the victims of these circumstances find it difficult to leave the situation because of the things that you just stated? There might be financial support, so they don't necessarily feel independent. Like, what are the things then that contributes to mothers and children being highly vulnerable in these kinds of situations?
So there's a lot of things I want to say about that. The first is that for most women who have kids with an abuser, it is extraordinarily hard to leave. And it's not just the financial issues, which are probably the most significant factor to keeping women, any woman, any victim in a relationship is the financial factor that is real, is just massive. Um, but the reality is that what we're talking about is a person who is focused on making sure you fail at that effort. So every strategy that might you implement, every strategy that you engage with other people to help you with, that person is as committed as possible to make sure you fail at that attempt to leave, to get away, to get safe, to get independent. They're going to do everything they can, up to and including killing you, depending on the abuser that you have. And so the reality of leaving is hard. It's difficult. You need a lot of help. You need to develop a safety plan in order for that to happen. And you need to understand that if you have kids in common with an abuser, that adds a whole other layer of problems and danger that you have to understand really well before you walk out the door. You should file for custody first, but be aware and be in the understanding that that person is going to fight you for custody the rest of the children's life until adulthood. They're going to make it as difficult as possible through family court for you not to succeed at getting away and to have custody. And so it's hard, but that's one of the things that domestic violence advocates are very good at, helping support and helping develop safety plans so that you can reduce as much of that damage as possible when you have kids in common.
And even thinking about understanding what resources are available so that they can get the assistance to do that, because being able to go through the system the right way or navigate the system the right way isn't sometimes intuitive. It can sometimes be difficult, and when that becomes hard, then folks tend to shy away from getting the kind of resources they need to be able to support them through the process. It doesn't sound like it's an easy process. And then when you have somebody pushing back as hard, that you tend to kind of shy away. And so,
yeah, you're absolutely right. And I don't want anyone to take that to mean that you shouldn't try, that you shouldn't do everything you can to protect yourself and your children. but I want you to understand that it's going to be difficult. I want you to know that it's going to be a process, and you're going to need support, both from friends and family, and qualified um, uh, attorneys or therapists, if you use them, people who know about trauma, people who know about domestic violence and understand those dynamics, because they can't help you well if they're not skilled in those areas.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Rita, because I think oftentimes, it can be a difficult situation to navigate, but just again, reiterating, despite the fact that it will be hard, you have to do whatever you can because it is necessary, to get out of that situation. But there is help available. And actually, at the end of this, too, I'll have you share some resources. And I know that, um, you also have some things going that can also support in this situation as well. And so another question that's sort of come up for me organically in this conversation when we're talking about the impact of domestic violence on mothers and children, what's some of the consequences of children experiencing this kind of trauma?
Well, there's been a really good study done. It was a longitudinal kind of study, so over a period of time, with a lot of, it's called the Adult Child, it's ACEs, Adult Childhood Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. So ACEs study. And what that study showed over time was that children who experienced trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, later in life developed long-term chronic health issues like diabetes, asthma, high blood pressure, heart disease, and that in fact many of them, their lives were shortened by the amount of time that they should have been living had they been living in a healthier environment, a less stressful environment. So I think that, and that's true for the adult victim as well. The living under that kind of stress, living in a war zone, basically, literally, has a long-term impact on you. So the sooner you can get out, the sooner you can start to normalize your life and to reduce the damage and the violence, the more likely it is that you can recover more quickly and that you can start to learn mitigating factors or ways to adjust to the impact that might have had.
When I think about that also, sometimes, when it's hard to find the courage to leave, knowing that and the impact that it also has on, your children, and not just short term, but long term, again, you always want to take your personal safety, but that information there, is enough to say, I have to be able to seek the help that I need and so deserve. So thank you for sharing that information with us, Rita. And so when folks are wanting to start the healing process, how do survivors start the healing process? Because again, the long-term trauma of this, there is long-term trauma of this as it continues, to fester. And so what can they do to start the healing process, probably for them? And if they have children that are involved, what would be sort of like the first steps in getting to a better place?
So I think one of the things that's really important for survivors to understand is that it's going to take a while and that you may have setbacks. So it's okay if you don't, if your trajectory of healing and feeling balanced doesn't have ups and downs. It's fine if it's not a straight upward mobile effort. But you keep working on it, you keep struggling to get to the place. I think the most important thing is to start to understand, remember, develop your sense of what you want, what you like, what you need. Because you've been with somebody who has constantly told you how stupid you are, how bad you are at being a mother, how ineffective you are, you're not a good sex partner. It's like you've got all these bad messages in your head that somebody has fed you for a long time to keep you off balance. And so it may take some time for you just to like sit back and and do some deep breathing and just think about, what is it? Do I like red or blue? Do I, is it chocolate or vanilla ice cream? I mean, what do I want? What do I need? What's good for me? Because you need to recenter that, I think. Doing that, and you know your kids pretty well, so you're going to understand what's in their best interest and start to develop ways to access those things for not just yourself, but your kids. A lot of women try yoga. A lot of women try meditation. A lot of women get more involved in their faith community again. Some, find a hobby. But, just redirecting your energy towards what's best for you, what you like, and what's good for you and your kids is really the best strategy. And remember, there are going to be bumps, but it's okay.
Such gems there, Rita, and the idea of first starting with self, because I think, oftentimes folks sometimes get away from situations like this, but if you haven't done the work with yourself, it's easy to revert back into situations like that. Not just domestic violence, but a lot of things that involve trauma. And so I think that's sort of been the underlying thread as we start thinking about how do we, live happier, purposeful, lives. And a part of it starts with doing the work itself. And so it sounds as if, once folks have gotten the resources they need to be out of that environment, the real work starts with self. Would you say that would be a salient takeaway?
Yeah, I do think so. And I think it's okay for you to focus on yourself. If I had one thing I could change about the women I had worked with over time, it would be that they took the actions they took because they cared about themselves more. A lot of the women, particularly the mothers, left when their kids were in danger, when they thought their kids were in danger. Well, I can take it, but he started after my kids. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard women say that, and it made me sad for them, because it's like, well, you deserve to be treated with respect too. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to have things that you want and need. And so if I could do anything to reiterate here, is like, think about, you need to be strong, you need to be able to function, and if you can do that, then you're going to be a much better mom, and it's going to be a much easier job if you're centered and you're able to stand in your strength. Because the one thing I can tell you is that the strongest human beings I've ever met in the world are survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. They are amazing, resilient, creative, flexible human beings, and they need to stand in that and use those skills, because it got them out alive, and they need to honor those skills.
So, what are ways that we can support women suffering from domestic violence that may be in our circle? Because again, oftentimes it might not be, out in the open. You might recognize some risk factors, or, maybe we outwardly know what's happening. What can we as a friend, a sister circle, do to support women suffering from domestic violence?
The probably most important thing is never give up. It's hard to watch them make choices that you think are not in their best interest, that you think might be endangering them, leaving and going back, whatever choices they might be making that you think they should be doing differently. Never stop supporting them. I know it's hard to watch people in relationships where you think are not healthy and might be dangerous for them, but they are doing what they can to survive in that relationship. And so it may look like the strategies they're using aren't helpful or crazy or, wouldn't be the choices you make, but you're not there. You don't know what the factors are that are making them behave in that certain way. And, they need support. They need not to be isolated. So our goal as advocates or friends and family is to just continue to say, I will be here for you. I will be here for you every time you reach out to me. It's hard for me to watch you be treated this way, but I love you and I will not walk away. And if you can stay, if you can hang with them long enough, you're going to find enough strength to be able to walk out that door and stay there. And I think for me that, for anyone who's wanting to support someone else, It's that you have to do whatever you need for self-care to deal with the trauma you might be feeling secondarily, but don't walk away. Never stop answering that phone, because one of those times it's going to be the call she makes that she takes the final step.
Yeah, and I think that was just so good. That information right there was so good, because I think that oftentimes when these situations are happening and people become aware, there's this rush to judgment, right away about what's happening in these particular situations, and the need to give advice about what should happen and shouldn't happen, not recognizing that that person in that moment is doing the best that they can. And the only thing that we can do in this moment is to be supportive and not give up. Of course, we're going to arm ourselves with the resources and, all the other things that we need to ensure that we understand what's happening and we can point them in the right direction. But it's never to go in with judgment. And then, when we don't necessarily get the result that we were looking for, then we kind of like take offense to it and say, oh, I'm just going to, let this situation go. The idea is to be there and try as much as possible to be supportive to this person until they're at a place where they can receive it.
Absolutely. That's just the biggest key factor, I do. And domestic violence hotlines are available for friends and family to talk about strategies as well. It's not just for victims looking for help. If you need to talk to somebody who might help you better understand how you can take care of yourself while you're trying to support the other person, make those calls as well. They're available for you. But like I said, the goal for the abuser is to isolate her from every support system she has. Your goal is to be as committed to not being erased from her.
That's good. That's good. Because again, there's sometimes the notion around, oh, well, this person doesn't want to be associated with me. And then we kind of, take it as some sort of, insult. And then somebody else's ego, is now offended, not recognizing that this person needs support in reverse and, saying, all right, I'll take a step back, but I'll keep, I'll keep one leg in there to make sure that, things are not getting worse. Essentially just being present. So I really appreciated that gem. And with the resources that you have in websites and all that, I will certainly get those from you, and then I will just make sure that I plug those in to be able to share with viewers once we share this episode with the team. And again, Rita, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise in this forum. The information we've garnered will certainly propel this movement forward and save lives. So again, I can't thank you enough. MRT family, please tune in on Thursday, May 21st for a live. We'll come back for Q&As based on this conversation that we have here. I will get Rita to join us if she can. And we'll be able to answer questions and chat about this particular episode of motherhood and domestic abuse. Thanks so much again, Rita.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on our Facebook and Instagram platforms at Motherhood Real Talk.